You are listening to the Love and Confidence Podcast, episode number 115. Welcome to the Love and Confidence Podcast. If you're a woman who wants to feel more irresistible, have more fun, and create deeper and more authentic connections, this podcast is for you. I am your host, certified life coach Lærke Nielsen, and I help you become the best and most confident version of yourself so you can attract the love life you desire. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome to the podcast again. Today I have a really special gift for you. This is a conversation I had with one of my friends who is also a coach, Ronda Loveridge. She is the Love Your Life coach, and we had a long talk about many things relating to relationships. We talk about how to take personal responsibility inside a relationship and what that means. And we talk about the secrets to having a healthy long-term relationship or marriage, because Rhonda has been married for almost 27 years and she agreed to share her wisdom in this area. And I really want to encourage you to listen all the way to the end, because Rhonda also shares her own love story and what happened when she met the love of her life, because that is such an inspiring story about how she managed her own thoughts and feelings when things didn't go exactly the way she was hoping for, at least not in the beginning. So I hope that you will enjoy the conversation, and I know that once you've heard it, you're going to want to have more of Rhonda's wisdom. And so then I recommend you to go and listen to her podcast, which is called the Love Your Life podcast. Rhonda has such an engaging way of explaining the concepts and giving you examples and stories and quotes. And I personally am a big fan of her podcast as well. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to her podcast so you can easily find it. And also, of course, if you want to connect with Rhonda and find out what she offers her clients, or you want to follow her on Instagram and so on, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. So go and check that out once you've listened to this episode. So I'm not going to speak longer because I want you to just dive into the conversation, and I know that you're going to learn a lot. So here we go. So welcome to the podcast, Rhonda. I'm so excited to have you here. I really have been looking forward to having this chat with you because we sort of grew up together as life coaches. We've been in the same certification class and we followed each other afterwards. And you have what I would say probably the best niche that you can have as a life coach. You are the Love Your Life coach. That is, in my opinion, just the best, because what more can we wish for, right? But maybe you want to present yourself and tell me a little bit about what exactly do you do and who do you help and what do you help them with typically?
Great. Yeah, I am a life coach. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, right in the very middle of North America. And how long have we been coaching? I've been coaching for 5 years,
Yeah,
5 years now.
yeah. We started
Wow.
during the pandemic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
2020.
just crazy how fast it goes. And I haven't niched down. So my clientele, it really varies. It's from all ages and it's all the sexes and different stages and different goals. But the thing that I focus on with my clients is we don't have to focus on controlling circumstances to be happy with our lives. So I do a lot of helping people just see what they think about the people in their life, the things in their life, and themselves. And my bread and butter is probably relationships. I really am most satisfied when I can help people really feel sincere connection and love for the people in their life, be it their sisters or their grandparents or their partner or their children. And I'm a mom of five, so I have four daughters that are out of the house, two that are married, and we were lucky to have our very first granddaughter this year. But I'm also a mom of one 11-year-old boy that still lives in our home. And so parenting is something that I've swam in for 26 years. And, it's consistently changing. You can't, just because you've been a parent to a 3-year-old doesn't mean you're prepared to be a parent to a 25-year-old. And it just really, really is always shifting. So I do find that a lot of people find me for those kind of different relationships in their lives. And I really, really do love that.
So there's a lot of focus on relationships, and I also like that, and you talk a lot about that in the podcast as well, that we don't have to change circumstances to feel better about our life. And that is very important to remember in relationships, right? Because we can't change other people. And
Yes.
especially when it comes to family, those are the ones where we often feel like changing them if we could. Is it often family relationships that you're helping clients with, or is it also other kinds like friendships or colleagues or
Yeah, it really runs the gamut, but family relationships tend to be the highest emotional intensity. But I've actually just last week been coaching on friendships
yeah.
and sister relationships, parent-child relationships. I have worked with people in the corporate world in their office and their team that they're building. So the principles apply really to whoever you're relating to, as also in the relationship of self. And I hear you talk about that a lot. And
Mm.
I was really happy when you started emphasizing that because I think I've heard the saying in my life that wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
Have you heard that one?
Yeah. Always.
Yeah, so like we bring ourselves with us. And if we're in a relationship with somebody and that ends, and we start another relationship, well, if we haven't learned the lessons and cleaned up our thoughts from the previous relationship, we're going to bring the same thought patterns to the new one.
Mm.
And then we're going to create the same kinds of problems for ourselves because I really do believe that that's there for us to learn. And if we will catch on to it and figure out what part of it we own, then we get to be happy with ourselves and more happy with our people wherever we go. And I guess, maybe if there was a theme when I'm coaching in relationships, it's personal responsibility because that is all we can control and acceptance.
Personal responsibility in what context? Could you give an example?
Sure. So, personal responsibility, well, you and I teach and have studied and learned that our thoughts create our feelings and our feelings drive our actions, and that the sum of our actions creates the results in our life.
Mm.
Well, when we believe that it's what other people do or say or don't do or don't say, that's just as big of a problem in relationships
Mm.
as what people do. If we believe it's what they do or say that creates results we don't like, we get very busy trying to focus on changing them. And everybody has, I'm sure, tried plenty of times to change other people, and it just doesn't work. It's not going to work because we can never control what they think,
Mhm.
which means we can't always control what they do. Sometimes you can ask nicely, please, I feel better when you text me every single day.
Mm.
Well, what we're trying to do when we ask somebody to text us in the frequency, and this happens a lot with parents of adult children.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
you'd be
but it happens
surprised
a
how
lot in
often this
dating too.
happens. It happens a ton in dating,
Yeah.
but we're trying to get them to do something so that we can feel better.
Yeah.
And anytime we're trying to fiddle with getting other people to change their behavior so that we can feel better, we are in the edge of emotional maturity that is childlike.
Mm.
And so I'm always helping my people notice, are you trying to figure out how they can do something differently? Or are you in the playground of what you can control? And let's look at what your thoughts are creating in this relationship.
Mm.
And so that's what I'm saying. It does not matter who it is that you're relating to. If your process is to go and notice what they're doing and be displeased with it, you're bringing that to every party you go to.
Yeah, and everything you just said is so relevant for dating as well. I love your music example with the text because that comes up all the time in the early stages. And I think it's almost like outsourcing our needs when we want someone else to do something to make us feel better. And where instead of focusing on, does he text me every day? We can ask ourselves, what am I making it mean that he texts me or he doesn't text me? Maybe if I don't hear from him for a day, I think he doesn't think of me, that I don't matter to him. And that is something you can challenge. Maybe he does actually think of you, he just doesn't text you right now. So, this idea of wanting other people to behave in a certain way to meet our needs, where we might not even be conscious about what is behind that, because it's not actually the text, it's more a feeling of being connected, right? It's something else, and that we can achieve in another way.
I love that example. Like there's just so many spin-offs. So we think that they don't care about us when they
Yeah,
don't text us.
yeah.
But the interesting thing, if we're going to bring it back to personal responsibility even more, is that when we think they don't care about us and we create a feeling with that thought that is disappointment, frustration, sadness,
Mm.
loss, like I have seen people go really far from that not getting a text to the thought
Yeah.
about not getting the text. They don't love me. Like it
They're
can
losing
just
interest.
really
They're about to
explode.
leave me. Yeah.
Okay. Well, once we start thinking that thought and create these feelings of disappointment, frustration, and loss, what happens is we change our behavior.
Mm.
So a person might start pouting. They might not text the other person when the natural flow of things had probably always been that the one that cares is the one that led out with the texting in the first place.
Mm.
And then that stops. And so then the person that you're relating to doesn't get the normal cue, and so the pattern gets all messed up, but the person that's watching the pattern is the one that's changing it, not the person that they're waiting to have text them.
Mm.
So you can see that when you stop texting or you start pouting or you distance yourself because what's going on over there, you create the result of disconnection
Mm.
because you change the pattern of communication in the relationship. And so the responsibility comes back to the person that is disappointed
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah.
It's now my burden to either communicate that I'm disappointed or take this as an opportunity to learn what I'm thinking and challenge those thoughts.
Yeah.
Because it is very rarely the first thoughts that we think the other person's thinking.
And there's sometimes in this situation also a huge focus on trying to figure out what is he thinking or they thinking. Why are they doing like this? What's going on in their mind instead of focusing on what's going on in my mind, where I
Exactly.
can actually control something. I can ask myself, do I want to go into a spiral of anxiety every time I don't hear from him? Or is it really that important for me to get a text every day? So I actually don't think we are compatible. This is even a deal breaker for me. That could also be an outcome if it's early dating.
Well, it's
Um,
beautiful use of boundaries. That, like you mentioned communication with relationships and managing our own mind. Well, great relationships don't just accidentally happen. We have to have good boundaries
mm,
for ourselves
mm.
in any relationship that we're in. And you notice I said a boundary for ourselves,
Yeah,
not running around setting boundaries for everybody else, because that's trying to control them so that we can feel better. It's
that's
managing
very interesting.
ourselves so that we can feel better.
So having a boundary for ourselves, can you give an example? What could that look like as opposed to having a boundary from for someone else?
Sure. So if we're going to go with this example of not texting,
Mm.
we started it.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
should
but it's
just,
a really good
we'll just
example.
keep it going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So say I'm starting to date new people and I'm texting somebody and they don't text back frequently, but I know that's something that I really care about. The boundary for me would be wow, this person doesn't seem to really care about continual communication in the pattern that I really enjoy the most, I have two choices. I can talk to them about it and find out what they think about it, stay curious, ask
Mm,
questions. So the boundary is when they don't do it, that means I tell myself I have a conversation about it. And I carry the burden of presenting, starting the conversation. If I don't want to have the conversation, maybe I haven't spent enough time with the person, or there's other things I'm also not quite sure of. My boundary for myself would be to stop texting the person.
mhm.
Or if we're already seeing each other in person, pull it back to friendship or whatever it is,
Mhm.
reframe the relationship because it's just not what I'm looking for. So that's what I mean as a boundary for myself. I know what I want.
Yeah.
If it's not happening, it's on me to manage it.
Yeah, and among the different choices here, there is not the option of changing him or the other person. And that is important to see, right? Because that is just not something that is available to us. It's changing ourselves or engaging in a communication where, as you say, we get curious instead of blaming and assuming
Hmm.
that I know the right way of doing this and it's got to be my way. Then we can get curious to find out what is going on in their mind and what are their thoughts about it. And maybe we can get to a common understanding where we find a different way to connect. And even though he doesn't text every day, I still feel okay.
Right. Exactly.
So you said boundaries was some of the things that are important for a long relationship. And I also am so curious to hear some of your wisdom about what does it take to have a healthy long-term relationship, because you have been married for 26, or was it soon
Yeah.
27 years? Yeah.
Soon to be
So
27 years.
you got some experience there. And what does it take to stay together and to keep, loving each other and wanting to be with each other, choosing each other? I'm curious to hear what are your thoughts about that? What do you think is the secret to a long-lasting relationship or marriage?
Yeah, I guess I feel when you say that, I feel a little blank all of a sudden because 27 years sounds like such a big amount of time.
Yeah.
When I'm like, how are we this old? How is it that we've been together this long? So 27 years means that there's lots of different phases in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think you have to get okay with having things not be the same
Mm,
as they always
mm,
used to be. And there's times when it's gotten kind of monotonous, honestly, and you have to do the work. I like how you said it, to keep choosing each other.
mm,
So that means lots of communication. And in our relationship, I'm the more forward thinking visionary person, maybe the least content of the two of us. And so the forward thinking and the reinventing usually has been, I drive that. And what I'm always looking for is us to be making sure that we're each checking in to see what it is that we personally want in our lives. Sometimes when you're raising children and you get lost in a relationship, you stop thinking about what it is that you want.
yeah.
And I don't really ride that bandwagon that's so popular about I have to make sure that my needs are first, and because I don't think you create really long-term relationships with selfishness.
Mm, mm,
You have to always be thinking about what the other person wants because you want to make sure that you're including that kind of in your life view and in your world view. But that said, I think each person in a relationship carries the burden of responsibility to know what it is that they like and what they want, because it's never the other person's job to make me happy. So I don't think it's Shane's job to make me happy, and I don't think it's my job to make Shane happy because I can't and he can't.
mm.
And there's been times in our lives when I thought it was his job. And I tried to get him to do things that would be just the exact way to make me happy on my birthday
Yeah.
or make me happy on Christmas. And what I would do is I wouldn't tell him what I thought would make me happy. I just waited to see if he would know me well enough to do the thing that would make me happy. And guess what? He's not a mind reader. He never did know what it was because most of the time I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's why it's my job to know the things that I want. And then I can use great communication. And if it's not something that's in his wheelhouse, then I'm going to be the one that manages that.
Mm.
And so I think with 27 years of marriage, we've both kind of done the work to figure out what the other person really likes and to make sure we build that into the way we map out our life together. And this man I married loves to golf more than anything on earth. But do you know he probably spent 19 years of our marriage not golfing? And I would encourage him to go golfing. I would say, I think it would be great. Maybe you should find a friend to go golfing. Well, his priority was raising our children and using our resources to give them the things that they needed. And he didn't want to spend our money on that thing for himself
Okay.
because he really liked the feeling of having our resources diverted to giving the girls the things that they needed. But he always knew that I was willing to not spend money on something else so that he could have that thing in his life. And so, he didn't ultimately choose it. It's not for me to create that for him.
He's
But
still
it
not
was
golfing.
great to communicate that I'm open to that
Yeah.
and I would spend our resources on that because you're important to me.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
don't know why that example came to the top.
No, but that's very sweet in a way. He wanted to focus on raising the children and that he didn't think like I'm first, like you said. I also believe that in a long-term relationship, you need to also have something for yourself that you nourish and cultivate, and where your partner is not necessarily part of it.
I've been so delighted watching him in the last 6 years kind of come back online
Mm.
with his golfing. And so it was so exciting this year. He just turned 50. And for his birthday, the kids and I got him his very first set of new golf clubs since he was 17.
Yeah.
And his excitement and delight are just something that lights me up to see him go doing it.
Yeah.
And now that we don't have four teenage daughters in the house daily, we set up a lot of the travels that we'll do around the golf. And
Mm.
so he knows he has permission to go do that, permission from me, which always existed, but now he gives himself more permission
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that. And so it doesn't hurt that we have two new son-in-laws that love to golf. That is his dream come
It
true.
helps a bit.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so you got to
So,
be able to know those things about yourself
yeah.
and then be willing to provide it for yourself and not make it the secret spy mission of your partner to divine what it is that
Yeah.
you want or need. And I think over time and with coaching, I have become aware of that burden of responsibility on myself, and I definitely think it is what makes for a fantastic relationship and
Mm.
helps especially in 27 years in, you got to keep figuring out some things that you want.
But you also said something about going through different phases. And I hear that from other people who've been married for a long time. They also say, yeah, we had actually several marriages or several kinds of
Mm.
relationship in the same relationship, right? Because we need to allow each other to grow and change a little bit and not have to stick to always being the same person as when you got married.
I met Shane when I was 23 and we married when I was 24. He was 22 when we met and married when we were 23.
Yeah,
So it is pretty young.
yeah.
It's more time together than
Then
it was on
yes.
our own or with our
Well,
families.
that's quite impressive. But it's true that we have to allow each other to go through different phases. And I think it was Esther Perel who says that some people have many relationships with different people, and some people have many relationships with the same person, right?
Oh, I
You
love
can
that
have like
quote.
different facets of the same relationship and different phases you go through. And I guess you especially experience that when you have children because they are a very clear evidence that time is passing because they grow up and then they have different phases in their life and then they're moving away from home and now you have a different life. So
Hmm.
when you have children, you get really conscious about how there are different phases in life.
Definitely.
I know you say, and I hear this also from other people who've been married for many years. They say, yeah, well, I don't really know anything about dating because I've been married for so many years. But there was a time where we talked and you told me about your own love story when you met Shane and what happened back then. And I was so blown away because I thought, this is such a beautiful example of a young woman being very wise and having very high integrity. So I would love if you want to share that story because I think it can be of inspiration for many listeners.
Well, it's a fun story for me to go back and think about because I have daughters right now that are in the 19 to 26-year-old
Mhm.
range. And I've watched them, two of them meet and marry, and I've got two that haven't met their significant other yet. And I spent some time with girls that are young girls that were like me in that age
Yeah.
group. I think the part of our story that I told you was right around the time we met. And I had had some longer term relationships earlier in college
Mm.
and had kind of taken a break. I had gone and lived in South America to do some service work. And I came back and was single and was considering getting back together with the last college boyfriend.
Mm.
And I happened to meet Shane at a wedding. His sister married my best friend's brother.
Okay.
So we met and we instantly had so much to talk about. And at that time away out of the country, I had kind of reorganized myself to think about what I really wanted in the long term. And I was looking down the road a little bit. I knew the kind of person I wanted, and the profile was a little different than it was when I was 19, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm.
And when I met Shane, he had all of these characteristics and the same kind of goals and vision that I was looking for. And so we instantly were able to communicate effortlessly.
Mm.
And it was really exciting. It was so exciting that after one date with him, I contacted the former boyfriend that was asking me to reconsider and start dating again. And I contacted him and told him, you know what, this isn't going to work. We need to let go and move on. And he was flabbergasted. He's like, well, why? Have
Mm.
you met someone? And I said, well, I'm not dating anyone, but yes, I met someone. And I always say that meeting Shane just showed me that the caliber of person that
Mm.
I wanted and the kind of person I wanted existed.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to let go of the thing I had just because I had it.
Yeah.
So it like bridged that gap for me. But then we continued to date and it got pretty serious quickly. At the end of every date, he would ask me out for another one. And that went on for a few months. And he came to me one day and he said, you know, I have really enjoyed dating you. We have so much in common. It's been wonderful, but I haven't dated a lot of women before. And I feel like this is going so fast and I don't have enough experience to know if this is really what I want. And, you know, that could be really crushing because I knew that it was different. I
Yes.
knew that he was exactly what I was looking for. And I knew that the way that it was unfolding with it being so effortless, that it was
Mm.
different than
Mm.
and special. So I heard it and I didn't burst into tears. I just kind of had this pause in my stillness in my own head. And I thought to myself, do you want a person that is always questioning if they want you? Do you want to be with somebody that wonders if there was somebody better?
Mm.
And I knew instantly that I did not want that in my
Mm.
life.
Mm.
And so I just looked at him and I said, you know, there is nothing dysfunctional about our relationship. It's been beautiful and wonderful. And I wouldn't want you to continue dating me if you have questions. So I hope you'll go date other people and that you're serious about that and that you really put some effort into it, but I'm going to make a prediction. I'm like, who does this? But I said, I'm going to make a prediction, and my prediction is you're not going to find anything like this. So when you get to that point in the road where you haven't found anything like what we have here, you should feel free to call me back. There will be no hard feelings. And I
It's
let him
so,
go.
that is so generous, I think, saying that there's going to be no hard feelings and not trying to grasp onto him and blame him for throwing away what you could see was so amazing. I mean, there was a really fine level of maturity that you showed there that I'm just so impressed because 24 is still quite young, right? And
Yeah.
just saying, yeah, you can come back. There's going to be no hard feelings. Wow. And
It
then what
was
happened?
it was so peaceful. Like I just
Yeah.
had this knowing, and I can't now let me tell you, my past relationships were not that mature. They were not.
Mm-mm.
I was busy trying to get people to do things
Yeah.
so that I could feel better.
Yeah.
But for some reason at that point, I had had such clarity about what I wanted to move to. And I wanted a partner that was all in. I didn't want to have to convince somebody
No.
that
No.
they wanted to be with
Mm,
me. And I did know that very, very clearly,
mm,
what I was looking for in dating. And so it did make it peaceful, and it didn't feel like it was about me. I
no.
knew that it was about him.
Mm,
And if you want to be with somebody, you know, you want them to have what they need. You don't want somebody to be lacking when they're with you. And so it was really nice. And I was very, very busy at that time. I was supporting myself completely. Still had 18-hour credits at the university. I had two jobs. I was writing a biography for a person. I was fulfilled. I was doing things in my life, building the life I wanted, and was being the person I wanted to be. And I think that really helped me
yeah.
to be able to keep going with that because I did have a plan for myself at that point.
Yes. And this is so important. You had already a fulfilling life when you were going somewhere. You had projects that you felt passionate about and that would meet a lot of those needs that we can sometimes try to get a partner to meet. You didn't actually need him. You wanted him, but you didn't need him in that sense.
Yeah. And I didn't date between the time that he broke up with me and the time that he called me back. It was 3 or 4 months. I was really busy. I figured if I met somebody and all of these things that I was doing, then I would for sure be interested in getting to know more people. I made new friends at that time,
Mm.
but he had up leveled my standard. And so it became really easy to tell if somebody fit what could be like that. He did go date other people, and not a ton,
No.
but it was enough for him to go, "Oh, she was right." And he
Mm.
said that he had a little bit of shyness
Mm.
to call me back because it was hard for him to believe that I wouldn't be bitter. But we had some mutual friends that assured him that I wasn't. And it was his birthday, and I had told them, "You should tell him I said happy birthday,"
Mm.
because they were going to see him. And he said, "When my sister told me that you said happy birthday, it felt like I could believe what you said,
Mm.
that you weren't mad."
Yeah.
And that gave him the courage to call.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So he came back and you got married and you're together still after almost 27 years.
Yeah.
And do you still tease him sometimes with that?
Oh, I love to tease with that story. I love to tease with that
Yeah.
story. Because ultimately, the part of that story that is my favorite thing to tease is that he chose me.
Yeah.
Like, I love reminding him, "You chose me, Buster, for
Yeah.
good or for bad.
Yeah.
You had your chance. You saw the way." And the funny part is about him that now that I know him like I do, decisions are very difficult for him. It
Mm.
is hard for him to buy a new pair of shoes. He will spend 5 times as much time trying on shoes as I will. And his family knew this about him. And his family was kind of encouraging him behind the scenes, which I didn't know at the time, but I'm grateful for now. But, decisions are hard. And so it's extra fun to say, "Well, decisions are hard for you, but you got clarity on this one. And look at you. Trust yourself. You're
Yeah.
good at decisions."
That was the right decision.
Yeah.
And it was also the right decision for you to let him go and to know that I only want him if he chooses me, basically.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I am grateful to my past self for that one.
Yes.
And I do try to teach the younger girls that I know and love. There's a catchphrase that kids will say sometimes, like, if I don't do this right now, I might miss the boat. And that's such a scarcity mindset thing to think that there's a boat to miss in the first place.
Yeah.
But what I tell the girls is there's no missing a boat. There is only building your boat. If
Mm.
we are busy building the boat of our life
Mm.
and we are putting in the features of it that really make us happy and make the journey comfortable and fun and anything that we want in it. My boat has a really good library in it, and there are great chairs to read books in because that's something that I've always done and always planned to do,
Mm.
right? So build our own boats, girls, and don't just let anybody on it.
Mm. Yeah.
Be a little picky about who you invite on
Yeah.
your boat because
Yeah.
their peace should exist on your boat. You don't want people coming on there that create a lot of things in your life that feel chaotic and not like peace.
Mm.
And so that's my favorite thing to say, kids, let's build our boats. Come on, women. We do not need someone else to build the boat for us, and we don't need passage on anyone else's boat. Ours is good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is so powerful. And as long as we have built a life that we really love and it's fun, it's exciting, it's fulfilling, then we can be more selective in who we let in.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Rhonda, this was so interesting, and we could continue. I know we could, but it's
I know
going to
I
be a
love
very
talking to
long
you,
episode.
Lerka. It
But
is so easy to talk to you.
and you too, I'm gonna put a link to your podcast in the show notes because I highly recommend everyone to go and give it a listen. So,
Thank you.
and thank you for sharing your wisdom about love and relationships. I really appreciate that. So, thank you so much for coming, spending your time with us here on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
If you like what you're hearing on this podcast and you want to get support from a coach on your love journey, I invite you to book a free consult call with me. You will find the link in the show notes. And also, don't forget to subscribe, and I would love it if you would rate and review this podcast, and then you'll also help other women find it.